And Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia joins us this morning. He, of course, has also signed the Norquist Pledge. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
I don't want to make this a conversation only about Grover because that seems to be all people want to talk about. But I wonder if Senator Graham's comments, Chambliss, and some others, if you're beginning to really sense a turning of the tide here.
Well, first of all, you got to remember, we've got to talk about comprehensive tax reform. We've got to talk about spending cuts. We've got to talk about debt and deficit reduction. Pulling out an isolated piece like raising rates or taking a mortgage interest deduction or whatever it might be, that doesn't serve any purpose. You've got to look at the entire problem, solve the problem in a macro sense. If you don't do that, we're all dead.
All right, but given that, where does Norquist fit in? Where does the pledge fit in? And has your own view on the pledge evolved?
My views haven't changed. I'm not for increasing tax rates. I am for reforming the code, raising the base upon which those rates might be applied, but I'm not for raising the rates.
Why is this attracting the lion's share? Why is revenue in general attracting the lion's share of the debate? I mean, I've heard a lot of complaints from some that say we're not giving due attention to reform, to entitlements. I mean, is it just, are taxes sexy? Is that it?
Well, with all due respect, if the media would stop asking about it, maybe we could start talking about comprehensive reform of entitlements, comprehensive reform of spending, because it is a complicated, complex process. And if you pull out one part of it and have a debate over that part, you're redirecting America's focus from where it ought to be, which is comprehensive reform of spending, entitlements, and taxes.
You have said before, Senator, you think an agreement actually is possible by the end of the year. We saw the leaders come out of the White House and everybody felt good on that Friday. Since then, I mean, we have some model portfolios that are based on us going over the cliff, and those portfolios are up since Election Day. Are you as confident as you were when you first said that?
I am, because I was in the Congress in September of 2008 when we blinked during the last fiscal crisis. The markets collapsed and we had a long recovery that we've just finally recovered from very modestly. I think inaction by the Congress would be reprehensible and irresponsible, and I still believe we'll get a bridge to reform next year.
But you think that's going to happen before year end, or do we somehow spill into January and then get serious?
Well, we ought to be serious right now. I'm serious right now, and I hope Harry Reid, Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi will all be serious. I think they will be serious, because going over the cliff doesn't make any sense.
We all remember the TARP vote that you referenced. That really didn't come to a resolution until the markets, I would argue, scared the bejesus out of Washington. I wonder how important you think that is this time. Do stocks need to fall before the two sides really get committed at the table?
That is a terrific question. That's the main question. In 2 days, we lost 1,600 points in the markets. It took us a lot longer time to come back and recover. I sat there and saw us stare defeat in the face and accept it. We cannot do it now, and I think the markets will respond to certainty. That's the biggest thing Congress needs to give American business and the American people. Certainty about their taxes, certainty about spending in Congress, and certainty about our commitment to lower the debt.
How do you argue that you are considering all elements of reform if, in fact, you're going to stick by the Norquist Pledge? Is there anything wrong with, as Senator Graham has said, with saying, you know, I made that pledge back then, but my job is to be a senator every single day and I feel differently now?
I'm not arguing about a pledge whatsoever, but it is our job to be a senator every single day, and we have to take on the problems of the day, and we have a major problem. And I think reforming the code makes the most sense. It worked in 1986 where we lowered rates at the top margin from 70 to 28, but expanded revenue because we cleared the base out, removed a lot of deductions, and had the rates that were lowered applied against a much higher base, which raised revenue.
Finally, you mentioned, Senator, the mortgage interest deduction. Big piece in the Times today about what that would do to housing. Obviously, we're concerned about that here as a business channel. Is that sacrosanct? Is that the third rail? Do we dare touch that in a serious way?
It's a very important tax policy to drive home ownership and the American dream, and I support it. And I think any tax deduction, whether it's charitable deduction, investment tax credits, whatever it might be, if you argue about them individually, you lose. But if you put a means test or a cap on itemized deductions, say at $50,000 or $30,000, then it doesn't apply against a specific mortgage interest, a specific deduction, but rather against the aggregate of deductions. That's the more sensible way to reform deductions.
And you think that's where we're headed, I assume?
I think that's a direction that makes a lot more political sense, and estimated by CBO, if you capped them at $50,000, you'd raise $775 billion over the next decade.
Well, that's certainly what Senator Corker proposed earlier in the week. Senator, good to talk to you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Great to be with you, Carl.
Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia.